Okay, good morning. This is our Hebrew kingdoms. We're going to finish looking at the division of Israel. Sad, sad, sad. That was some uplifting, exciting dance music from some Israeli bands. It's great stuff, great stuff. I woke up to it. I'm just kidding. No, I didn't. All right. The kingdom divides. As we did yesterday, make sure you have your notes on out. Open them up. Again, you are filling in the blank. You're not writing all this stuff down. You just have blanks to fill. Make sure you're there. If not, pause it now so you can get that out. Open it up, and you're good. Here we go. So, look for the spot that says the kingdom divides, Roman numeral 2. Here we go. Looking at this gentleman where we stopped yesterday. Remember, he's going to become the next king. Israel and Judah. Well, as we see through all of life, we live, we die. Solomon, who was our third king, he was the son of David or David, dies in 922 BCE, and his son Rehoboam becomes king. Now, if you could predict, based on this title and the big title, Israel's not going to stay together. Possibly not so much that he was a bad king, but he wasn't very popular. And here's why. Well, our northern people of Israel actually wanted him, Rehoboam, to lower their taxes. And under Solomon, and more specifically his son, Rehoboam, they had a lot of building projects. So they were building like temples and monuments and things that were like expensive and took a lot of people and etc., etc. The people of the northern part of Israel wanted him to stop doing that. And he was like, nah, brah. So instead of dealing with that drama, the northerners are going to leave the kingdom of Israel. And we're actually going to see two kingdoms be born out of this big, massive kingdom of Israel. Remember back to yesterday, Israel, as we see it today on a map, is kind of what the kingdom of Israel looked like under David, Solomon, and Saul. So Rehoboam is going to be the last king of a united Israel. And here's a good example showing you a map of how that division is going to look. Our northern people are going to split off and be known as Israel, whereas our southern people will take on the new name known as Judah, which is where Jerusalem is. So this will be our split kingdoms of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. Woo! So the split, as you just saw there, Israel split into two kingdoms. And our two kingdoms, our northern one is going to be known as Israel. So that was Rehoboam's northern kingdom. And the southern kingdom is going to be known as Judah. And the words Judaism or Jews or Jewish actually all come from Judah, which was also one of the 12 tribes as well. And these two separate kingdoms are going to rule and last 200 years, which actually isn't too bad that they lasted 200 years. To give you an idea of how long that is, the American Revolution, which was in the 1776 through like the 1780s, was just over 200 years ago for us. So about the time span in which the United States has been around is how long these two kingdoms will last, which is a decent amount of time. However, as we saw last chapter, we're going to have these Assyrians and Babylonians showing up, and well, they're going to ruin all that stuff. But our Assyrians are going to end up forcing our Israelis to pay tribute, because if you remember back to last chapter, they had a very, very advanced army for the time. Remember, they had bronze weapons and like bronze armor, so they seemed unstoppable. And because of that, they're going to be intimidating, so the Israelis will pay tribute so they are not attacked. Another vocab word for that, if you will, would be extortion. They were extorted, kind of like the mafia does. Mafia would do that. They intimidate and scare people into paying them bribes. Protection money. You're going to be safe. Our Assyrians also are going to take over Israel and Judah. And then eventually, our Babylonians will come along and conquer all of the Assyrian territories. If you remember back to that crash course we were trying to watch, you may not have seen it, but the Assyrians, their religion basically told them that they had to keep winning and winning and going to war and keep winning, and if they stopped, the world would end. That's what they believed. So that's also why they would go on to conquer Israel and Judah anyways, because they needed to keep winning and winning and winning and winning, and eventually they lost, and that's when their kingdom fell apart. And our Babylonians, when they take over this Assyrian territory of Judah and Israel, the Jewish people were not having all these outside rulers. They were kind of tired of it, and so they had some rebellions. And because of those rebellions, and because they had a different religion and he didn't really like it, Nebuchadnezzar, who's in the Bible, would actually imprison and enslave the Jewish people. He would take them captive, and as a lesson because of their rebellion, he destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. Remember how they spent all that time and money building that big, beautiful cathedral temple? Yeah, the Babylonians destroyed it to send a message. Oof. And last one we saw today. Our Jewish exiles, the Babylonian captivity, and how they will end up rebuilding a temple. So, under the Babylonians, when they're prisoners / slaves, they're really going to struggle, the Jewish people, to keep their identity as captives. They are going to feel like God's punishing them. They're going to question whether God exists. They're going to have all these kind of challenges in captivity, because if we were the chosen people of God, why would he have us captured to become slaves? It doesn't make sense, right? However, they will hold on to their faith. They will not convert to the religions of Babylonia. They won't fall to the pressure of the cultures. They're going to hold on to their language, their religion. They're going to still believe in God. And the biggest reason, they're going to talk to those rabbis, their priests, if you will. They're going to follow different prophets and gain advice on keeping their faith. So much like we've all been experiencing hard times recently, right? And I know in Mass, Father Philip and Father Hambro have talked about people question their faith when they lose someone close to them, right? Same idea here. So not as heartbroken as losing someone, but still challenging when you feel like God's punishing you, right? So this is the same thing that we could be going through now. And the last thing, the rebuilding of the temple. My dude Cyrus takes over and runs the Persian Empire. Remember we talked about him? He's going to conquer those Babylonians in 539 BCE. And when my dude Cyrus takes over, part of the reason he becomes known as Cyrus the Great is because he's going to show friendship towards the Jewish people. He's going to be really kind to them. And remember, he had religious tolerance and acceptance for cultures. So he doesn't get why these people are prisoners. And so he's going to have them released from their captivity. They're like no longer prisoners or slaves. And he's going to let them go home and do their thing, practice their religion, believe in God. He is cool with people being what they are. And afterwards, the Jewish began to rebuild their temple that was destroyed. So the Temple of Solomon. And the new temple will be finished by about 515 BCE. Today, when you see people at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem praying, the Wailing Wall is what is left of this temple here. Now I know what you're wondering. Why is there just a wall left? We're going to talk about that next week. So, that is the last thing for you today. Don't forget to answer that 3-2-1 exit ticket. Remember, that's 3 things you learned here today. 2 things that were really interesting. And 1 question you still have. Have a great weekend. I will catch you via voice. Next week, we're going to look at how Rome treats the Hebrews. Spoilers, not that well. And we are going to start gearing up for a timeline that we're going to end up making relating to the Hebrew kingdoms. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And I will catch you when I catch you. Bye.